Y'all, we're making gravy. Come on. Welcome to Highfalutin Low Carb, the almost weekly web series where we find and test the best low carb recipes this crazy internet has to offer. Today, we're tackling low carb brown gravy. Stay tuned. All right, guys, low carb brown gravy. Apparently, it's a little trickier than some of us think. With as much meat as we cook on keto, carnivore, and low carb, you'd think that making a gravy or brown gravy especially would be kind of easy. But oftentimes you're left with something that's way too thin and watery, that's just sort of a soup instead of a gravy. Sometimes you're left with something that's way too thick and claggy and comes out kind of gelatinous. And then sometimes you're just left with something that's oily and greasy and not really constitutes what we think of as a gravy. So today we're tackling two different recipes that you guys have sent me repeatedly. Both of these are YouTube channels, so I'm going to leave links down below to all of these. The first recipe can be made fairly quickly with a few ingredients, doesn't require any pre-planning, and supposedly makes a very nice thick brown gravy to go on anything that you want. And this is called Irresistible Keto Brown Gravy, and it is by our friend over at Southern Keto, Victor. I'm going to again leave a link down below to his channel. If you're here on YouTube, you can just search Southern Keto Irresistible Brown Gravy. And then our second recipe comes to us from the channel Cook with Mel, and this is her ultimate carnivore gravy for keto. So be sure, again, it's just here on her YouTube link. I'll leave a link here, or you can just search YouTube for Cook with Mel gravy recipe and find her recipe there. Now, both of these, the written instructions and the written ingredients are going to be in their video descriptions to the links that I've given you below. So it's just one click away to find everything you want to see. So these are going to go really fast. The first one is the Southern Keto recipe. So let me get set up and I'll meet you right back here and we'll start recipe number one. Okay, so let's get started on this first recipe. Again, this is by Southern Keto. This is his Irresistible Keto Brown Gravy. And this is so easy. It's a few ingredients that go directly in a pot, so there's not a lot to talk about here. Now, a lot of times you've already made your meat or whatever your keto mashed potatoes, whether that's mashed cauliflower, whatever you're going to do that you're wanting gravy on, you don't have meat scrapings to make a gravy from. And this is where I think this recipe excels because it works with just a few ingredients from your pantry. The first of those is butter. I've got a pot here over very low heat for now until I get started going. All this just goes in the pool and we're going to go, it's going to swim pretty quickly. We're going to add in a couple of cups of beef broth. This is bone broth. He used a commercial stock, so that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to move this up to about medium heat because we're ready to start adding in the other items here. This is going to be the spices and flavorings for this. This is smoked paprika. This is garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. Again, if you want to know exact amounts for all of this, click the link down below to go to his video where he lists all of these ingredients. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. This is the way we do things here. I didn't create these recipes. I'm just here to test them. So I ask that you go to their website or their YouTube channel because they deserve the traffic for all the hard work that they've done. Now, here is the other ingredient that some of you, maybe including me, might find controversial because of past experiences with it. This is xanthan gum. This is a thickening agent that is really low in carbs, and it makes things thick, but it can also make things, for lack of a better word, slimy. I hate to say it that way. This calls for a full teaspoon, which is a lot of xanthan gum. But you kind of have to keep this moving because it can form a ball really quickly in the middle of your liquid. But we're going to heat this to boiling and sort of keep it moving. So hopefully we shouldn't have that problem. But if you do, this can always just be zapped with a quick little immersion blender or what have you to save the day if things start to clump up on you. But like I said, many people find that xanthan gum can be gummy. It is a gum, or for lack of a better word, slimy. I am sensitive to it in that way, meaning like I can detect when it is in a product, and it's great in baked goods to kind of sort of help work as a gluten replacement. I tend to not be super fond of it. in liquids, but I myself have a gravy recipe on this channel for sawmill country gravy from 7 years ago when I first started. It's like one of the second or third recipes on this videos on this channel, and I use xanthan gum in that, and still do. I keep it on hand. So what we're going to do here is just bring this to a boil. I'm going to turn my heat up just a little bit. You don't want this a rolling boil. But once it comes to a boil, we're going to keep stirring this, and it's going to keep moving for about a minute, and then we can just put a lid on it, keep it warm until we need it for whatever we're going to do. Now, I'm not making any meats today to try this with. I'm just here to test the gravy recipes. This is going to really excel when you put it on whatever protein or like I said, mashed cauliflower or whatever you're using for whatever calls for gravy that you're craving gravy, which I get a gravy craving every now and then for sure. This will be probably excel both of these recipes on that. So I'm gonna speed this up so you don't have to watch, and I'll meet you right back here as soon as this has come to a boil, and shouldn't take but a second. See you in a bit. All right, so that cooked on a low boil for about a minute, and this is nice and thick, as you can see from here. And I'll tell you now, this little cheap whisk is probably the thing I'm asked the most about on this channel is, what is that whisk? It's a spiral whisk, I believe it's called. They are super cheap, and they are wonderful because they are shaped to get into the bottom edges of a pot like this and scrape the entire bottom of a pot. I love it. They are super cheap. I'll leave a link down below from Amazon, but undoubtedly there will be 3 or 4 comments on every video that I use this in, and it's like, what is that whisk that you have? This is just going to go on the back burner for now, but I want to show you the consistency is really nice. It's coating the back of a spoon really, really well. So we'll see what this holds up like. I'm just going to remove it from the heat, cover it with a lid, and I'm going to put this over on the back burner of the stove on off. I'll reheat it gently with a whisk just before we taste it, because we've got some work to do on our second recipe. It's not a lot, but it is a little bit of cook time. So, but before we begin, I need to give a huge thank you to the sponsor of this video, Upside. Upside is the free app that earns you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and dining. There are over 100,000 different restaurants, gas stations, and grocery stores on the app, which means that earning cash back is right around the corner. Now, I live in a fairly large city, but spend most of my time right here in my small neighborhood. I thought when I started using the app that it was going to focus mainly on chain restaurants and chain dining, but that is not the case. As you can see here, just in right around me in this little area, all of my favorite little mom and pop local hotspots that I was already dining at anyway are part of this app. So I can get cash back right here by visiting some of my favorite places like Nola on Fifth, which is great Creole and Cajun food, Ortega's Mexican Bistro, the Asian Bistro, Goi Kwan, lots of different places that I'm already eating at already. Plus, when I travel, gas is fantastic to get cash back on, and these are not gimmicks like points and credits and rewards. This is actual cash money that you can transfer directly to your bank account and use however you like. Now, people earn 3 times more cash back using Upside than other products like loyalty programs or credit card rewards. Top Upside earners are making as much as $300 a month. To find out how much you could earn, be sure to click the link in the video description below to download the Upside app and use code Highfalutin to get an extra 25 cents for every gallon of gas on your first tank of gas, or you can scan the QR code here on the screen to claim this offer. So I'm using the free Upside app to earn cash back regularly at gas stations, grocery stores, restaurants, even the little local mom and pop places that I was already shopping at and eating at right here in my own little neighborhoods. So thank you, Upside, for sponsoring this. It's sponsorships like yours that keep channels like mine on the air, and for that I am truly appreciative. So guys, if you want to support me, go support them. Earn cash back at Upside using the link in the video description below. All right, let's get started on this second recipe. Come on. All right, guys, so let's get started on this second recipe. Again, this is by the YouTube channel Cook with Mel. It's not a channel, unfortunately, that I was terribly familiar with, so thank you for whoever sent this to me. A few of you did. This is a delightful channel. I love her content. Her food looks amazing. This is her recipe for the ultimate carnivore gravy. She gives a couple of options in there to make this if dairy free as well, keto. If you don't want to do carnivore, you can use some other items. So but I'm going to follow her recipe the way she did it in the video, and this takes a little bit of work ahead of time. So the other recipe was for quick and fast, make it that night because you need gravy for that meal. This is a make ahead situation where you're going to make some small little gravy cubes, like in an ice cube tray or in a muffin tin. So it's a little bit of work ahead of time for prep, but then you're going to store them in the freezer, and then you pull out one of these cubes to mix with broth or whatever pan drippings you already have made for the meal that you're making. So it's a little bit of work ahead of time, but it sets you up for multiple gravy recipes and events, I guess you could say gravy events in the future. And this, it looks amazing and it sounds very interesting because this has eggs in it. So over very low heat, this is interesting to me, very low heat. I'm going to melt tablespoon of butter in the bottom of a non-stick skillet. And what we're going to do is put egg whites in this. Now you can, of course, crack fresh egg whites. I find it cheapest just to buy a carton of egg whites. And what she has is 500 grams. And I don't usually give ingredients, but I wanted to mention this specifically. She said a 500-gram carton of egg whites, just 100% egg whites. You'll forgive me, I don't know if she's from, sounds like Australia or New Zealand. I don't know which, and I could be wrong about that. But anyway, where she lives sells obviously cartons in 500 grams. Here in America, we can get a pint carton, which is slightly less than 500 grams. It's about 470. You're probably totally fine to just use that, but you know me, I like to be as precise as possible, so I bought a larger one and measured out 500 grams exactly of egg whites, but I can't imagine 30 grams is going to make that. I mean, it's not rocket science here. We're not baking or doing, kitchen science, but again, it's unfair to test a recipe unless you follow the directions exactly. So that's what I've done here. So we're going to pour these egg whites once this butter gets melted, and you want this low, 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 because once you pour these in, you don't stir these. You leave them on low, covered, for about 20 minutes, and you don't stir them. You're not scrambling these things, right? As weird as that feels to do, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a lid on this. My power setting is 1 out of 10 on my induction cooktop here. And there's not going to be anything really to watch here. So I would normally speed this up because you can see it. But with the lid on, maybe I'll leave the camera on. We'll see what it looks like. But this eventually is just going to turn into a white disc. And if you get some browning on the bottom, she said that's fine because we're making brown gravy. But you don't want it to burn. You're not doing this on like medium heat, right? You're not making scrambled egg whites. We're not doing that. We're making what will look like a solid disc of eggs. Once that 20 minutes or so is up and it's solid, you'll have some liquid on the top. She removes the lid, flips it over, and starts to break it up on low heat and let it cook for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes more just to get the rest of that moisture out, and then it'll cool and we'll go from there. So I'll meet you back here in a few minutes regardless, about 20 minutes. See you in a bit. Okay, so we are back, and I did put this up. I said I had originally put it on a heat level of 1. I did bump this up to a heat level of 3. It's been about 21 minutes now, and as you can see, we've got a white disc. There is some liquid still on top. So, yep. So I'm just going to break this apart. It was cooked very gently The top is almost a gelatinous jelly consistency. So from here, she just breaks this up and makes sure all of this cooks to almost dry. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to speed this up because it shouldn't take much longer. This is still on a low heat of 3. And then from there, we just need to let this cool because blenders don't really play. It's going to go in a blender, and blenders don't really play too well with super warm stuff. So we're going to let it cool off just a little bit. She also mentioned that she does not put any seasoning in this, in the gravy cube that we're building, the concentrate, because she expects this to be flavored with whatever you're cooking. You know, you can if you want to add herbs or whatever spices, you can control the salt level, because generally meat drippings, if you've marinated or seasoned your meat and you're using the meat drippings to make gravy, those tend to be pretty high, high in sodium or salt or whatever else has expelled from the meat. So she's using that to get your flavorings from. So as you can see, this is pretty dry now. That happened quickly. So I'm going to turn this off and take this off heat and let this cool for 5 or 10 minutes just so that we don't explode the blender. And I'll meet you right back here in just a second. Okay, so let's carry on with the rest of this recipe. We've got our cooked eggs. They're mostly cool. They're still have a little bit of heat on them, but nothing crazy. So I'm going to add these to my blender. She used a smaller blender, sort of like something that looked like a NutriBullet or one of those things. And to this, we're going to add a couple of things. Again, no seasonings, but we're going to add in a little bit of beef broth, beef bone broth or stock. You can also use some meat drippings if you have those. Again, if you want to know how much, be sure to go to Cook with Mel, her channel there here on YouTube. To this, we're going to add in a little bit of heavy cream. If you want to do this dairy-free, you can use coconut cream, she said. And to this, I'm also going to add in a little bit of beef gelatin, and this is what sort of gives it its thickness and its ability to thicken things up. If you don't have beef gelatin, most of those are going to be healthier, I guess you could say, beef gelatin or grass-fed beef gelatin. But they're pricey, they are, and regular gelatin, unflavored gelatin in the grocery store is super cheap. It's a couple of bucks. So you can use that, but be aware that most cheaper grocery store traditional gelatins are made with pork. So if you don't eat pork for whatever reason, that's not going to work for you. And generally, from the grass-fed aspect of knowing where the product came from, beef gelatin tends to be a little better, but it's not about taste. They're both going to taste the same, if that is a taste at all. Generally not. It's just the gelling action. So we're going to blend this up until we get something thick. All right, so hold on. Okay, I'm going to just knock the sides down here. What you're trying to do is make sure that you don't have any large pieces of egg. You want to try to make sure that the egg white, the little white specks, are as small as you can get them. We're adding just enough liquid in there to make this a movable object, right? And there is an egg smell here. You know, just to be honest, I can smell eggs. It smells like egg whites. It's not overpowering. It's not like if there were yolks involved, which has a much more sulfury smell to me. So she says that this sort of goes away, especially in the refrigerator or freezer, and then most especially when you're cooking it with your spices and your broth and your meat drippings. You can't really detect the egg odor. So fingers crossed on that. I'm going to give this another whirl, and then we'll go from there. Now, from here, she puts this in either an ice cube tray or a small miniature mini muffin tin. She uses a silicone mold because you've got a texture that's sort of like a pudding, right? It's thick. You see that? So, but these need to be portioned out in some way, not any exact amount, because you're just going to use however much you think you need based on how much broth and drippings you have. I've got one of those silicone egg molds from my, what do you call that thing? The Instant Pot that I think will work perfectly for this. So she just comes in and fills up and then puts these in the freezer. And then once they're frozen, you can, take them out and put them in a Ziploc bag or whatever, however you want to store them. And then when you're making dinner on a Tuesday night and you want to make gravy and you've got some broth or you've got some meat drippings from whatever you've made, you just throw one of these into your liquid and whisk it up, and boom, you've got a super thick gravy that hers looks gorgeous, I'll be honest with you. And it's super high protein, as you can tell, because it's got the egg. And yeah, it looks great. So I'm going to put some of these in here, and then I'm going to get set up, and I'll show you how you actually work with this once you've already got them frozen. Okay, so let's get started on making the actual gravy from our gravy cube by Cook with Mel. So this is, I've got a cup of broth over here, bone broth, that is on the high, no, I mean, it's on medium heat. And this is going to be what we're going to call our reserved pan juices, right? The point of this is you're going to use one of your beef cubes, one of your gravy cubes in whatever pan drippings you have. And if you don't, you can also, she said, just use plain broth. So I put about a cup of this in here. And now this is where also she said that it's going to take on the flavorings of whatever you're making, right? So this is not her recipe, but I'm going to mimic the spices we used in our first recipe. This is garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, salt, and I'm going to throw in a little bit of pepper as well. This will just keep the flavor profile the same as our other recipe, so that when we're testing it or whatever, we kind of that's not a factor in tricking our tongues. So, but you're going to use whatever your pan drippings that you already have going on. And if you are making something that doesn't have any pan drippings, this is where you just use a boxed stock. In fact, she used bouillon cubes in hers, beef bouillon. So, and this is where we're going to add in our cube, our gravy cube. But now yours are going to be frozen, right? This isn't frozen yet. So it's going to work a little differently, or look a little differently, but it should work the exact same. It's not the temperature of the product that is causing the gravy to make a gravy. It's the ingredients, right? So yours will be completely frozen or cold, but when you add it in, but that's just for making it easy to store and keep on hand. So this looks really good. It already turned nice and cloudy. All right, so we are back, and these are kind of cool and ready for us to taste. As you can see, this is recipe number 1 over here on this side. This is recipe number 2. This one's a little bit darker than the other one, but this has heavy cream in it, the second one, so it kind of lightens things up. This held up well. It didn't break. I kept it on low heat and then gave it a quick little whisk before I brought it over here, so it's still a little warm. It coats the back of the spoon pretty well, as you can see. Holds on really well. I'm going to pour myself a bowl of gravy, I guess you could say, as weird as that sounds, for us to taste. And then this is our second recipe. It is a little bit thinner, but you see it doesn't have quite the holding power, but it is a nice gravy and doesn't have the xanthan gum in it that sort of gels the other one up. So what does it look like here as we pour it in? And I'm going to tell you, both of these are probably going to be delicious, more delicious with actual meat drippings, but we'll see from there. All right, so let's taste this first recipe. This is the Southern Keto's, what did he call it? Irresistible Keto brown gravy. And I'm concerned about the xanthan gum as a not a huge fan of it. That is a concern for me. So again, it'll be served with whatever meat you're eating it with, but what does it taste like? Get off the spoon. Hangs on good. That's pretty good. I'm going to say I'm very surprised and pleasantly surprised that does not have nearly the gelatinous, slimy flavor that I have come to expect from xanthan gum. He uses a full teaspoon in that, which is a lot. Xanthan gum, just small amounts do wonderful things, but a larger amount can do bad things. But this is he has made this a few times, I can tell, with these ratios to get this consistency, and that is, I would liken that to any of the brown gravy packs, the packets, you know, the non-keto traditional, or the jarred. Have you had like the, I think Campbell's Home Style makes ones. There are different brands that make a jar of gravy. That's what those taste like. And while it's not my ultimate gravy, that is respectable. And honestly, if I were making a roast or had something that had some fat in it that had rendered out, substitute some of that 4 tablespoons of butter with fat from your meat, and that would really up that game a whole lot in creating a more natural flavor. But as it is, even with just plain broth, that's good. Not mad at that at all. Okay, recipe number 2. It's a thinner consistency, no egg flavor or odor at all. I mean, no egg odor. I haven't tasted it yet, but it is a little bit lighter. And this is where, you know, you can add in another cube. If you make smaller cubes, you're able to control how much you're putting in more than the larger cubes like I've made. So maybe an ice cube tray might work better for that. But how does it taste? It smells good. It's good. Ooh. It doesn't taste like eggs at all. I don't know how to say this. It has a more real flavor than the first recipe. The first recipe is great, but it feels and tastes like an instant gravy, which has its place. This tastes like a gravy that came from the meat you were making. And if you had actually used the pan scrapings on either of these, it would have really upped the game. So I'm going to give both of these an A for sure. The first recipe is great if you are just making a quick meal and you don't have one of these pre-made gravy pucks or cubes, and you just need to get gravy on the table and you're craving some gravy. This is an easy thing, came together real quickly. It was as easy as a packet of gravy from the grocery store. Recipe number 2, took a little more work. You got 20 minutes of cooking that egg. You've got to blend it up. You've got to make it ahead of time. But once you do, I've got probably 6 more servings that I can make 6 servings of gravy in on a quick weeknight. But you have to have been prepared. So in that instance, I would have chosen the second one, even though it's not quite as thick. But again, another cube would have thickened that up. So low carb gravy, keto gravy, carnivore gravy. Yeah, both of these are really good. And I wasn't as mad about the xanthan gum as I thought I was going to be. Sorry to say that, Victor, but that's a perfect ratio. I can tell you have worked on that to get that thick but not slimy. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I say it every time. These videos are a way for me to maintain my low carb way of eating, and looking in the end of that camera as often as I can helps keep me honest. So I appreciate that you have come along for the journey. If you don't know, follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's just Highfalutin Low Carb over in both of those places. Please be sure to hit the like button down below and the thumbs up. Lets other people know that this is a video that other people may like, so that YouTube can serve it to them. Be sure you've hit the subscribe button and the bell button down below to know as soon as I release a new video. And thanks again to my sponsor, Upside, for sponsoring this video. I'll leave the QR code here on the screen. It'll also be in the video description below. And lastly, I want to thank my rock stars, my Patreon members. You see their names always here on the side. If you want to see your name over here, go to patreon.com/highfalutin-low-carb. If you don't know what Patreon is, think of it as the tip jar for the internet. It lets people like you who enjoy what people like me do here on YouTube. You can give $1 or $2 a month just to keep the train on the tracks and see yourself here as one of the people that make all of this possible. So thank you so much. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, today is a great day. Have a great day. Bye-bye.